Evening, it's October 8th, 2024. Welcome to Littleton Conservation Zoom meeting. We have a proposed agenda starting at 7:30. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add for administrative discussions? We do not have minutes ready for tonight's discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to add something on the community garden and the turtle sidewalk.
Sorry, community garden, and what was the second one?
The turtle sidewalk.
Okay. And then I have one just as a reminder that there's a meeting tomorrow in room 103 from 4:30 to 5:30 for a review of parcel inventories to be considered for conservation. Anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I can bring up one potential site that I saw some folks doing work on Tejado on the drive on to work. I mentioned it to Tim and Amy, but we can bring that up.
Great, I'll add that on. Okay, so we have 4 other things to add. Let's go ahead and start with continued discussion enforcement order on 30 Warren Street, unpermitted construction of a walkway within the buffer zone and work in the rear yard. This is just an update, correct?
Yeah, Tim, do you want to do that real quick?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing my video because my internet's being a little spotty, so hopefully that helps. Yeah, it was just a quick update that Casey talked with Dan Sturts of Littleton Earthworks, and they're gonna be removing the fill this fall, seeding, and then stabilizing that area with jute netting until the spring.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or concerns or anything? Okay. Next, continued discussion enforcement order 20 Caliva, unpermitted beach nourishment.
That's also just a quick update. They have done the plantings. They've done everything, and the plantings were the last things. They've got those in, and we'll just give them till the spring to make sure they're still alive, and then I think you're all set with that.
So we're going to do not a full growing season?
It wasn't in the EO, but I think approving it now is not something you want to do.
No, I was thinking next year. Okay.
Yeah, definitely next year, but take a look at it and see what's going on in May or June.
Right. Okay. Continued discussion enforcement order 15 Powers Road, unpermitted grading and fill in the buffer zone. Tim, I think you had mentioned the owner and Matt might be here.
Yeah, I think we have John here. I'm gonna promote him.
Okay.
I'm on, but I don't believe is Matt on yet?
I don't see him in the attendees.
He told me he's in a Lancaster Zoom meeting that should wrap up around 7:30, so he might just be running a few minutes late.
Okay. Do you want to just hang on for a bit, John, and we can go on to one other thing and come back?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would appreciate that.
Yep. Okay. So let's go ahead to the next, which was discussion Foster Street reconstruction, Mass DEP 204-0991, invasive species treatments.
So we have Brian here to speak to that, and I'm gonna share my screen so we can all see the plan. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Brian, you there? Amy, I can't see while I'm sharing my screen. Is Brian in the attendees?
Brian, you're muted and your video's off. He is under panelist. So Brian, you're still muted.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can. So Brian,
Yes,
if you could introduce
Sorry.
yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, hi everybody, how you doing? My name is Brian Blackaby. I'm the project manager on the Foster Street reconstruction job for Onyx Corporation.
Okay, great. Tell us what you're looking at.
So yeah, I'm sorry, I've got some safe mode because I'm in my truck right now. But I think what Tim had shown was basically we came up with a mapping system. We have a consultant for us, SWCA. They specialize in invasive species treatment. So we went on a walk with MassDOT, and Concom was there as well. So once we went on that walk, it was discovered that basically there's quite a few areas of invasive species, and there's some treatment areas. I think the biggest concern is they fall within the wetland buffers, but there's quite a bit of tree removal that needs to happen. And until we kind of get approval on the treatment of these species, we're kind of at a standstill on the job. So, Tim, I don't know if you want to expand further on that or.
I'm showing the plans right now. I mean, you guys can see the colored areas. So the blue line's the wetland line. The yellow highlighted lines are the 50 and the 100, and the block colors are the areas where they've identified the invasives. Brian, are you guys going to be treating all those areas, or is there? I know you mentioned the knotweed is more of a high priority. You mentioned you're going to be using glyphosate.
So I think the majority of the knotweed was actually over on Taylor Street, which I don't need, that doesn't need to be treated. So basically the area is shown, where the new shared youth path is going to go. And forgive me, I don't know the species name exactly, but that was basically on the north side of Taylor Street. That was the areas that we're most concerned with, because those are the areas we need to clear, grub, and start the relocation of the poles, power poles. So it's basically, if you're looking at these drawings, it's the top of the top side of the drawings where we expand Foster Street, and that's where the shared youth path goes from Taylor all the way down past the commuter rail station, all the way basically to Balsam.
Now, Brian, I don't have that plan in front of me. I'm gonna pull it up here, but do you know?
Tim, you're breaking up again.
I was showing plans that had invasive work for buffers. Is there invasives in the buffers at that junction of Taylor and Foster?
So I believe there is some, but we don't. So I guess that's the west side of Taylor Street is where the majority of the knotweed was found. We don't do much over there at all. I mean, basically starting at Taylor, I think it's 305 Foster. On the north side of the road, there's those big trees. So that first section, there's really nothing to do. But once you get into moving east, you just have that thick brush. And again, there were several different species found. There was no knotweed found in those areas. So I think that the treatment of the knotweed that was referenced over on Taylor, I don't think that needs to be addressed. I mean, our primary focus is, again, that it's roughly a 15-foot to 18-foot swath on the north side of the roadway of Foster Street that we need to clear out and start the relocation of the power poles.
Tim, do you happen to have any images, photos from who was ever out on site so the commission can see what we're looking at?
Yeah, so Tim, I don't know
Sarah,
if you.
Was that a question for me? I didn't.
Yes. Yep. You're breaking up too. Tim, I didn't know if there were any photos that can be shared of the particular area in question.
I didn't receive any photos, just the plans. I'm trying to pull up the plan here. Amy, can you pull up the plan? Mine seems to be taking quite a bit.
Brian made reference that commissioners had gone out recently.
So what we did a site walk, and yeah, Tim, the day of the site walk, we do have a report. I thought that was forwarded to you by MassDOT. There is a report which shows not only the maps, but there's also kind of a picture log, which shows the various species in the areas that we're talking about. I don't have the ability to show that right now, unfortunately, but there are photos we can send.
Yeah, I've got it shown.
Tim, you're breaking up. So, Brian, can you remind us how many trees are coming down?
So that's kind of a convoluted question because there's, the way that we have a unit of measurement, there's several trees, like big trees, but then within the clearing and grubbing, I mean, there's probably, I can't tell you how many smaller trees.
Okay. And what's your time frame?
I mean, we were looking to start this work. The tree clearing we were looking to start weeks ago. Basically what happened was the pay items we have with Mass DOT, we had an item to make this map, but we never had an item to treat the species.
Okay.
So we thought one of two things. Number one, there is none, which would be great. But the other was we have to address this. And if we do, we talked to MassDOT and basically said we need a change order to move forward with this work. So this is really holding up work right now to start the tree removal, the tree trimming, the clearing and grubbing, and then Littleton Light we've been in touch with. We want them right behind us starting to sink new poles in the areas that we clear. So I mean, we're ready to start this work as soon as we get the okay. I think there's some contractual things between MassDOT and the town. I really can't speak further of that, but as far as when we're looking to do this, we're looking to do this as soon as possible.
Amy, can you clarify for us the state of the invasives right now? Is this an okay time to be doing this? I think everybody's having technical problems.
Amy, you're muted.
Still muted.
Yeah, it looks like it's telling us you're muted anyway.
Amy was on 2 separate.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sarah,
It wasn't.
Moving to
Yep.
the fall, typically around this time of year is a good time, but I mean, the deadline for that is approaching fairly quickly.
Okay. Commissioners, what are our thoughts on this?
I'm not clear. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Now
can
we
now.
can hear
We
you.
can now. Amy, we were just discussing the time frame of this, if we can like really go forward with this right now in order to let Brian start.
Yeah, so it's a little bit late in the season, but I think it's fine. And my understanding from what I just heard is that they, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, they want to do this so that as they're clearing and grubbing and taking material out, it is not contaminated with invasive species.
Yeah,
So-
that's definitely one of the things. I mean, there's language in the specs of the contract we signed that, it's basically our responsibility not to remove anything from the site, which would have an effect on any other area wherever we bring this stuff. The other issue too is, spreading it within the site itself. If we have a piece of equipment that's working in an area where there is invasive species, there's certain protocols you have to take to wash equipment down, do this and that, very time consuming. And then God forbid we went to another part of the job with that same machine and, this stuff spreads and then, the burden's on us. So, the treatment is necessary. I'm not sure. I mean, we've got 5 other MassDOT jobs going on right now throughout, the district. And there's always if there's a map and there's an item for this initial step, there's always one for the treatment of it. So that was the biggest hangup for us, was that there was no item for the treatment, but now, we certainly want to strike as soon as we can so we don't miss whatever windows you guys are talking about. Because if we did have to wait to the spring, or I don't know if the work can be done when if it's considered dormant over the winter. I don't know if that's an accurate statement, but definitely it's something where we want to get going as soon as possible.
Okay, so commissioners, we need to make a decision here.
I like the idea of getting rid of the invasives. I don't like the idea that we're getting rid of trees also, and we don't know how many are the magnitude of that.
Well, the trees were already approved.
Yeah, that's already been approved, so it's
sorry.
just that, yeah, we're just keeping the ball rolling. It's just that now we have to deal with the invasive. So, Brian, with your assurances that this can get done quickly, I would make a motion to approve this, to go ahead and to remove it and to get it, treated as soon as possible.
Is this just something, a minor mod? Or I guess I want to be educated on how we're approving this.
Well, yeah, and that's why it's here, since it was not in the notice of intent.
Right.
And we did not get to see the specs to know that this was going to happen.
Right.
So you would either need to approve this as a minor mod, or request, an amendment.
Looking
If
at
it's
this,
Sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
I'm just looking at these plans. It's a lot of work,
Yeah,
and this isn't a minor amount of grubbing and removing invasive species.
Yeah, and I understand typically you vote during these meetings. I thought there is a report, and again, and my apologies, I'm not available to send that out right now, but there is a report which kind of documents, with pictures,
Yeah,
certain areas. So,
that report is uploaded on our site. I'm looking at it right now.
okay. All right. So you see the pictures, with the species names that SWCA, the consultant, put together.
But that doesn't say, it maps everything. It doesn't say how if they're going to be treated or not.
Yeah, right. That's
Right. So,
Okay, so I misunderstood them. I thought that Brian had stated that they were going to get treated.
well, this is kind of the conundrum we're in right now, because there's discussions going on between MassDOT, the town. Obviously, we're kind of the middleman here, where we work technically for MassDOT, but obviously this had to go through Conservation Committee. Maybe there needs to be a side discussion with the town, because we don't want to get direction from one and not the other. We just want to make sure everybody's on the same page, basically.
And we appreciate that.
The treatment of this stuff is basically per the direction of someone. And whether that's MassDOT or it's the town of Littleton, that I really can't answer. But we do know that, there's areas where this is known, and we don't want to get in a situation further down the road where we go into one of these areas to work, clear this stuff, and all of a sudden, 3 years from now, it pops up on a map where there's invasive species in a location where there wasn't previously.
I mean, Brian, it sounds like we have the problem defined, but the solution is application of some pesticide at some rate by someone at some time, none of which I think has been defined, right? Am I missing something here?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, there is some information as far as at the rate to which specific areas. Again, that was something where, as a contractor, we kind of ask for direction. So, basically what we were paid to do is make a map of where all this stuff is. We submit it, and then we're supposed to get direction. So, maybe we're missing a step here with MassDOT, or we're not sure if we get direction from DOT or Littleton. But
I'm going to tell you that my inclination is to to not give you authorization to implement a plan that has no specifics to it.
Right.
In principle, I'm not opposed to it. I get what you're trying to do, but we don't take the application of herbicides and pesticides trivially. And I don't know in any scenario where we would say, yeah, just like go do sort of normal best practice stuff. And it sounds like that's what we're being asked to approve here. And I'm not okay with that.
Okay.
Even if I'm in principle okay with applying herbicides to achieve a invasive species control outcome.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I'm happy to hear from other commissioners that I'm way off base here, but that's where I see it, and I'm not super comfy going forward yet.
And
I was
Kyle, that's
wondering
not
myself.
outlined in what you're looking at online in that report, correct?
Correct.
None of that.
No,
none of
No.
it's the same plans that Tim was showing us, but that at the back end of that, it's the photos and kind of giving the location.
So there's no narrative for treatment.
No, there's no narrative. I'm not saying it sounds like they do. They need direction. Yeah, I think step has been missed here where MassDOT probably has their applicator that they use or their standard practice of what they would typically do. I'm not comfortable saying yes to this without having seen that first.
Right.
So
I know that's
typically there is another step in this process. And again, I think it's a discussion that I need to have with the DOT people because this was the first step. And then typically what we would do if we had this pay item I keep referencing already in the contract, we have like we call it a full blown IPMS plan, invasive plant management systems, which would give you, I believe, that everything you're talking about, the criteria, the application rates, the exact locations. I think part of this discussion, which we're not sure of, and again, it's kind of a gray area with all parties involved, is if it's something where you want our consultant to give recommendations to the treated areas and the application rates, obviously, yes. The treated areas is more something where it's something that really comes down to how much of this do you want treated, and obviously that comes with a price tag. So that's kind of where this whole thing comes into, where we're waiting for some sort of direction. We can come up with recommendations, and maybe that's the next step we need to take.
Yeah, Brian, I'm going to turn this around on you a little bit. We're not dictating any invasive species control here. Your contract dictates that, and we're not going to step in the place of the town and tell you what needs to be done. You need to tell us what needs to be removed and how you're going to do it.
Yeah, it sounds like there's two different conversations that need to be had, right? One with MassDOT on the protocols, and then back to our town highway to say, well, how much of this do you want us to take out? And then coming to us and say, hey, here's what everybody wants us to take out, right?
So from a procedural standpoint, Brian, we meet on October 22nd. Commissioners, it sounds like this would not be a minor modification. Let's just, so they don't come in at the next meeting and then we say, oh, well, we need to do X, Y, Z. Is there any other guidance that we can give Onyx with this?
I think one piece of guidance that I would give is that I typically prefer to see maximum physical removal over herbicides and pesticides, and understand that we can't achieve optimum invasive species control without those. But to the extent that manual labor can offset some of the chemical applications, that's essentially what I'm going to look for in the plan, right? We're not just going to spray willy-nilly because it's easier.
Okay. All right. So Brian, with your permission, we will move you forward to the next meeting, which is October 22nd. And then perhaps you can confer with Amy and Tim whether that's how that will be listed, whether it's a discussion or a hearing item.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then I think also in the meantime, maybe Amy and Tim, I think we need to circle back with maybe some of the MassDOT folks and have a better plan of action before we get here. But we will move forward. Again, I have to get approval from MassDOT because they're the ones that pay us. But to move forward with this plan, and we'll submit that.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, thank you
How
very
does
much.
this affect when they can actually start work?
They'll be
I mean,
Yeah.
if we don't get some sort of direction to remove this stuff, this is really the first step in the job. There's other work we're going to try to get going on within the street, but obviously one of the biggest steps in the job is to clear that area on the north side of Foster Street, and then the utility pole relocations is a huge activity because all the poles on the side of the road basically get moved about 15 feet to the north. So until that area is cleared, we can't start to remove the poles. Once the new poles are installed, the transfer of all the wires between Littleton Light, Verizon, whoever else is on the pole, I mean, that it's like a 6-month process for them to move everything.
No, I was more referring to, I thought Amy had suggested that we were near the end of the ideal time for doing the removal.
Yeah, and that's something that SWCA is going to have to help you out with, I think, as your consultant for this. And I would like to ask the commissioners if the majority of these areas, they're just going to remove physically within what would have been the grading limits anyway. I assume that's kind of a non-issue. It's if they want to start herbicide that you have to decide whether or not it's a additional filing or minor mod. Is that?
I agree with that, Amy. The physical removal has already been permitted as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So if it ends up, they only have a patch or two of Japanese knotweed they want to treat, that might be kind of one level. If they actually want to treat all these blobs, that's a whole different story.
Okay.
Or if DOT is making them do that treatment.
Okay.
So, but alternatively, just
with due regards, can you all have that discussion later? We've got to keep going with other
Yes.
ones.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
Brian. Okay. Let's go back. John, thank you for waiting. Continued discussion enforcement order 15 Powers Road, unpermitted grading, infill and buffer zone. John, I think you're here, and I see Matt is in the waiting room.
He's on his way in.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Good evening, guys.
Yep. And Matt, so we are joined by John and Matt. So thank you for joining us, John. Let us, if there's any updates, feel free to share that with us. And Matt, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to go out on the site as well.
I was actually just retained to do this work. I did look at the materials that were provided to me by the commission office. So I'm familiar with what happened with the 2 site walks in terms of the enforcement order and the plan that was provided to me from the 2019 RDA. From the looks of what I see the commission's concerns are, the first things that I'm going to go do this week is I'm going to go out there and I'm going to, for the next meeting, have the wetland redelineated so that it can be examined and we can figure out exactly where the edge of wetland is, if it's moved, if the wetland's been altered by the work. Based on what I saw the commission's concerns on the enforcement order and the documentation from the sidewalks, it looks like you guys were concerned that some of the work might have spilled over and actually might have touched the edge of the wetland area. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to redelineate that whole area, see exactly where the wetland line currently is now, because it looks like the prior delineation was over 5 years old. So that should be done. I will examine the area to see where it looks like we're having potential issues for any type of erosion, and work with my client to get erosion protection in place right away, and start the planning for doing remedial work or any other type of remedial or after the fact NOI the commission might want. In the meantime, I will keep in touch with the commission office and keep Amy and Tim apprised as to what's going on. That's really all I have for now because I'm so new to the issue. But I did notice right away that the 2 major things that need to be done based on your inputs is to get that wetland redelineated right away. And to start getting erosion protection in the spots where it needs to be. So, and I will work with the office to make sure that that's done quickly and in a satisfactory manner so we can get to work on the remaining documentation.
Okay. And commissioners, anyone have any questions for Matt or for John? Thank you for coming on board to support John.
I don't have any questions. Appreciate you being here, Matt.
Thank you.
Agree with the plan. What one thing to emphasize, right, Matt, is that the end objective is a remediation or restoration plan, right? That's what we're driving at.
Got it.
And so we meet again on the 22nd. Not sure if you'll have a plan for them, but we'll at least put you on for an update.
Yeah, I'll do my best to do as much as possible, but I will definitely have, at a minimum, I'll have that wetland redelineated, the office out to take a look at it so we can see exactly where the parameters are. So it'll eliminate a lot of the guesswork. I think that will actually go a long way towards formulating a good remedial plan. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming in, John.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Have a good night.
It's
Appreciate
8 o'clock. We're going to start the 7:45 public hearing 161 Tehadawon. We do not have a Mass DEP number. U32-7-0 bylaw waiver required installation of a septic system. Who's here to speak?
I am Jack Maloney from Dillis and Roy. How are you?
Good, thanks. Go ahead, Jack.
Let me just, can I share my screen?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, 161 Tehadawon Road. It's outlined in pink. We do have a wetland down at the bottom of the hill off property in blue, 50 foot in orange, 100 foot in orange. Alexandra has bought the house. She plans on renovating it. First step was to do soil testing and a septic system design, which we have here. In yellow, we have a new Presby system. And then up above, we have a reserve area. The old tank will be removed. New 1,500 gallon 2-compartment tank will be installed down to a distribution box connecting the new system. And then we have fill and grading for the breakout as shown. This hatch square is a possible future addition outside the buffer zone, so we just wanted to show that for tonight's meeting. The area will be wrapped in erosion control. I believe I have straw wattles that wrap around the base of this. The current edge of tree line is right where my cursor is right now. You can see that kind of a bubble line in there. So this is all basically open lawn area now. And it will be lawn area by the time we get done putting the new system in and doing all the grading. And that's the project in a nutshell. I will, there are some other plantings in here that was part of another, I'm not going to say issue, but with the owner. And if you want her to speak on that stuff right now, I think Alex is in the audience.
I think it's helpful because some time has passed for whether it's the owner or you, Jack, to just go through why we're here at a later date regarding the trees, the ones that were removed, and possibly what's been proposed to be replanted in kind. So I'm not sure who wants to speak to the commission on that.
Sure, I can cover that. Since I think I last joined in February and just quickly last month for the update. But since then, and cutting down trees, I worked with a landscape architect to identify native species and locations to replant. The dark green bubbles represent trees. There are 10 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, replacing the 9 total that I took out. 8 were within the 100-foot buffer zone, as well as 4 shrubs to also get to 14 total plantings to replant from what was taken out. The light green represents things that were cut, and the dark green are replantings. I had sent also a list of what these are, which I can pull up, but
I think I actually have them on
Oh,
the second
thank you.
page. Yep.
yep. I'm not great with the terminologies, but we had worked with Amy, I believe, to identify size and species. So most of these are red maples, which was mostly what was taken out in the back part. So 1-for-1 replacing red maples on the closest to the wetland line. And then 3 birches and 2 black gums sort of in the middle section between that further back line and the septic/house. And then 4 larger shrubs.
I think it's helpful for the commission if you can just perhaps remind us what was taken in terms of diameter and what's being replaced.
Sure, let me pull that up. I'm going to override your screen share, Jack. Oh, thank you. Yes, so, or it's up. It was there as well, but. This was what was taken. Can we see this okay?
Yes.
Great. So the biggest ones, there was a big quad maple on the, we'll call it the top, and one down at the bottom, a maple and a pine on the bottom. And then there was a 24-inch maple. This is what I would consider the closest to the wetland buffer. 10, 11, 5-inch maple, and there was a 18-inch ash. It was only about 8 feet tall. There was the remaining stump at the time, but I did include that in the 5 that I was replacing 1-for-1 in that space with 5 more maples. And then the 2 gums were over here and 3 birches are over here. I do plan to plant further up outside of the 100-foot buffer. That's, as Jack mentioned, maybe as part of a potential renovation and getting the septic in that space, but happy to include that in a plan if we need to. But what's proposed today is focused on replacing within the 100-foot with the 14 plantings.
Okay. Commissioners, questions, comments?
I appreciate the effort at the 1-for-1 replacement on number. My 2 cents is that we probably need to see more total replanting to achieve sort of the ecological function that was lost. We took out some pretty big trees there. I'm conceptually okay with this. I just think we need more planting of either trees or shrubs to try and replicate some of that function. Especially understanding that some of those trees that are being planted may not survive. The other thing that I would want to see here, and I want to be careful, it's not obvious to me that this filing addresses the replanting. I still have to understand that, but let's come back to that in a second. I would also want to see, in the context of the replanting, a plan for survivability and replacement of trees that don't survive. Coming back to the overall premise here, I'm generally comfortable with what's been proposed as far as the septic system. I think a couple little details we would want to typically ask about: stockpiling of material, some expectations about clean fill, free of invasives, some little details like that, but in principle, good with that. My biggest concern is making sure we get the replanting right.
So just to clarify, Chase, is there a specific area that is of more concern for you? Is it this one? This is the overlay. I know it's a little messy. Like having more where these 5 were taken out?
Yeah, I think my 2 cents, and again, I'm happy to be overruled by the commission, but my 2 cents is you have some room back there to do some additional replantings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to do. I mean, we're typically asking projects that are taking out trees to replant at, you know, a 2-to-1 ratio kind of thing in terms of number. We're still not going to replace the diameters that have been removed, but I also think you've counted broadly here in the context of dead trees and stumps and so on. So I don't want to. My goal is not to be punitive. I just want to
No, I
replace
hear you.
ecological
More. I
function.
got it. More. Yeah. I also will just say this isn't cleared. Like there are trees that were here. These were the ones that I cut. So
Yeah,
it's not
my 2 cents
completely
worth is
clear.
there's still a forest there.
Yeah.
And if we're putting more trees in there, what's the expectancy of those to live versus being overshadowed by the overstory that's there? Would it make more sense to do low shrub growth plantings on that slope that we're installing for the septic system versus more trees within trees?
I'm very open to that, Jack. I think that could make a lot of good sense. I would certainly defer to Amy and Tim, who have more expertise there. But
We looking to kind of renaturalize that area, or ultimately is someone thinking they're going to have a grass lawn back there?
No, I'm maintaining I'm not pushing back the forest line, the vegetation line, I guess we would call it. That's pretty firm. There's other trees that are along this as well. So yeah, I'm not pushing it back.
you could create a nice and very interesting transitional habitat though by planting some shrubs along that slope. So you've got a transition from shrubs and, you know, open lawn to shrubs to forest. And that creates a lot of ecological diversity.
Okay. I had asked Amy about like potential apple trees, and I know that was outside of the diameter for replacement, but would those be appropriate for the scope of having more?
This is Carl. I would almost try and put some pollinators on that slope, to be honest with you.
Right. Okay. So I can go. Okay.
Probably gonna get a lot. I would imagine it's gonna get a lot of sun.
Yeah, it should. The sunnier spot is certainly up there. So mostly, but
I would like to see that, especially what Chase was talking about on the edge of the transition area to the forest.
Okay. I can definitely work with that. Any other feedback or specifics that I should take into account for my next iteration?
I know we're looking at a bylaw waiver. Has that been submitted and all good?
Yes, that was submitted.
Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
Your leaching field, it looks like, is just inside the 100.
Correct. It straddles it half in, half
Yeah.
out.
There's no opportunity to pull that all the way out?
Unfortunately, due to Littleton's Board of Health regulations, we need to maintain 10 feet between the primary and the reserve area.
All right.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, if I could have, I would have.
Sure.
So
Understood.
The one thing I don't want to get lost in my comments is that we will want to see some commitment to inspect these to ensure survivability a couple of years out and replant if we don't achieve minimum survivability expectations.
Right. And with that conversation, I think we've bumped out to 3 years from the 2 years in the last few filings with the commission. So that's something that I would ask for, to go out for monitoring for 3 years. Okay. Does anyone else have anything?
The slope you're putting behind the leaching field, what is that today? What kind of, is it just?
It's grass.
it's grass. It's all lawn from the back of the house all the way down to the existing tree line.
Okay. Thank you.
So we meet again on the 22nd. Is it the applicant's wish to just carry on with your modifications for the next meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you. Jack, do you have anything else?
No, I think we had to continue anyway because we don't have a DEP number.
Okay. Thank you. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay. It's 8:15. We'd like to open that 8 o'clock hearing, continued public hearing, notice of intent 151 Taylor Street. No DEP number, bylaw waiver required. installation of electric vehicle charging stations. Who's here to speak to that?
Yeah, hi, this is Dean Apostolaris. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I should have Steve Fusco as well
Not yet.
in the audience yet. In any case, we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let me know when you guys are able to see that.
Yep.
Okay, great. I realize I'm a new face for the presentation. The last time we appeared before the commission here, my partner Steve, who's a landscape architect, was presenting upon the application. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend. I realized he didn't have a lot of the background information about the intention of the project, the purpose of the project. So I would like to just reiterate that and perhaps fill in some of the more pertinent details about the project that I think can help inform the commission's awareness and overall reception to what we're doing here and what we've revised the submission to show for you guys this round. So again, this project is part of a nationwide effort that Amazon is putting into place at many of their distribution facilities across the country. They are transitioning their fleet of delivery last mile vans from ICE or internal combustion engine vehicles into electric vans. And with that transition comes the need to install the charging infrastructure that's required to keep these vehicles charged up and on the road and delivering all of our packages. So with that, they have been rolling out this sort of EV program, and they've been installing all of the electrical infrastructure, the transformers, the switch gears, the electrical vehicle charging infrastructure at the parking lots in order to actually serve those vehicles. So this project here at 151 Taylor in Littleton is one of many of those projects where Amazon is intending to transition their entire fleet of vans from, like I said, internal combustion engines over to electric vans. And so that's sort of the onset of the project here. The reason that we're in front of the commission is due to the fact that we need to bring in a certain high voltage power onto the site to service a specific charger type that's known as DC fast charging. For the folks in the commission who are unfamiliar with that, DC fast charging requires a 480 volt power. It's a little bit higher than your typical, what we call in the industry, level 2 power, which runs on a 208 120 volt service. So in order to bring power for that high powered charger, we've actually coordinated with the local utility to be able to run an additional line onto the site to service the chargers and bring that appropriate power. I do also want to make a distinction that I don't excuse me. I do want to make a distinction that I don't believe was made or mentioned in the last hearing that I think is very important to the overall scope of the project, is the fact that there's a well project that is going on the opposing side of this site for a water line that's being run, and a power line from the Littleton Water and Electric Department is actually proposed to be ran from this same manhole that we're tying into. And the reason that they aren't doing this work as a part of their project is because we actually need the power before they do, and we want to get going with this project. We want to be able to install this infrastructure and transition that fleet over to electric and start charging those vans. And so what you're seeing on the screen here is actually the entire route that the water department, the electric department is proposing for their greater project in order to bring power to the south of the site for that other project. And the reason we've kind of stepped in, like I said, is because the timing, it just isn't really fast enough for us. We'd like to transition the fleet as soon as possible. We'd like to get this infrastructure installed as soon as possible. So I'm just going to trace here with my cursor. So they are planning to grab power from this same manhole and run it in the same exact geometry that we are showing on our plan. And really what our scope covers is what you're seeing in red here. And there's an entirely different project through them that they are going to end up doing themselves as a part of this sort of grander electrical extension. And that's what this orange line here shows. And so I just wanted to make that distinction that, you know, this power line, while it is serving our project, there is sort of a background, more general, large scale project that this is going to be used for as well. And so they're not necessarily two sort of segmented projects. But the timing just, you know, we wanted to get started on this sooner than they would have liked to. And so that's the reason. With that being said, I wanted to get into a little bit more about the application resubmission. So we had fielded a number of comments from our last meeting. So I appreciate your patience with us, and I appreciate you guys making those notes on our application. We had resubmitted a set of plans that includes a landscape plan, and you can find that in the submission materials. So we noted your comment last time about the specific tree clearing. We're removing 6 total trees that are above 6 inches DBH, which totals to about, 90 total inches of DBH. And so we are proposing to replant 60 trees that all have a caliper size of 1.5 inches. And that would total up to our 90 that we're removing. We had to find a place on the site for these trees that made the most sense. If you're unfamiliar, that project that I was talking about previously with the well and the water line extension actually noted a specific buffer area for plantings that was specific to that project, which are actually on the subject property here that we're talking about. And so there were already designated planting areas that we actually had to stay out of, that were designated specifically for that project. I'm seeing some nods from Chase, so you guys might already be familiar with that. So we are proposing to replant in these 2 specific areas here, which we found to be sufficient. You know, we're close to the wood line here. We think an extension of that forested area would be sufficient in terms of reestablishing the environmental nature of anything that we would have ended up disturbing as a part of our project. I guess just to get into like the numerical values, I think we went over them the last time. They haven't changed at all, but we are clearing trees within the 50-foot wetland buffer as a part of this utility extension, about 2,250 square feet. Within the 100-foot wetland buffer, about 2,505 square feet, so about 255 more within the 100-foot buffer than what we're doing in the 50-foot buffer. As a part of that clearing, we had done a site visit out, actually with the utility department, to actually flag that line that we're running. We know that was a request the commission had previously made, so we had done that with the utility. So that line is out there and flagged, and we were able to locate 6 specific trees that were above that 6-inch DBH, and those species of those trees are listed here on the screen. Again, this is part of the application resubmission, and we are proposing to replant the 60 trees of 1.5-inch caliper size. And we have on sheet, I guess it's exhibit 1 or sheet L 1.1, we have our tree planting schedule. So it's a mixture of sugar maple, sweet gum, sour gum, pine oak, American linden. We feel those were native species that made the most sense for us. They're being planted about 12 feet apart on center minimum in both areas. And obviously you can see there's a more heavily dense area planted to the north, but you know, we found this area to the south that could also support some trees for our purposes there too. And those were really the extent of the changes that we had made to the plan. I know there was a comment about specifically looking at some alternatives. I do have some details on those with respect to why we perhaps couldn't run power from the building, or perhaps why we couldn't run power from on the opposing side of that bridge. There's a couple of reasons for that, and they're outlined in detail in our comment response plan, in our comment response memo, but I'll briefly go over them. There's a couple things that are associated with long electrical runs. The number one that's most general, that's applicable to all projects, is voltage drop. And the longer that you have an electrical run, the longer that a voltage drop is caused over that run. And you lose power actually over the course of that run, and it's not efficient, nor would it really make engineering sense for us to run, a 900-foot run over a bridge and disturb much more area than it would be for us to do what we're proposing to now. So that alternative was looked at, and those details are shown in our common response memo. And then the other fact is that we are proposing to bring a higher voltage of power, that 480 volt power that I was talking about in the beginning of the conversation. That power just does not exist on the site currently. And so we would be required to actually bring that in from the utility in order to do what we're trying to do here. So I think I've gone through all the details that I had on my list to go through. I'd be happy to open it up for discussion and help answer any of the additional clarifying questions that the group might have. Or I'm happy to show any other figures or anything. But that concludes, I guess, the initial presentation that I had for you guys. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Commissioners, questions, comments?
This is Carl. So I'm all in favor of electrifying. In fact, this is one of the discussion items when Amazon first proposed building there, was whether they're going to be electric vehicles or not. So in my mind, I think it's a plus that you're coming around to this. Are you planning on, sounds like you're going to be sharing that electrical right of way with the town's water project? And if that's the case, is Amazon going to make, since you need to have it sooner, will you be basically funding the cost for that to go in? How would that, I mean, I like the idea, if I'm not even sure, have we permitted the water department yet for their
Yeah,
project?
that's done. That's been approved.
That's approved. Okay, so
And I was just looking up, as far as I can tell, on the Trumbull Well plans did not show this connection out to the manhole.
oh, it didn't. So
It just showed it up to kind of visitor parking area.
So this would have to be an amendment to their plans if we wind up going this route.
Well, Dean, it's the water department's not going to have to go back and reopen this easement, right? You'll be putting in, is it two conduits or just?
No, yeah, we would be running all the conduit from that manhole on the northern portion of the site to a proposed electrical manhole. Here, let me pull up the plan.
Yeah, that's
so
what Carl was trying to ask, was making sure we're doing this once and not going back through it a second time.
Yeah, so essentially that manhole up in the top area of the site that's in question, this is an inset here, so the match line is about yay on the plan, just so you can orient yourself. So that manhole that we're pulling from is located here, sort of at the top of the site. What we're proposing to do is, as of course in our application, clear these trees and run this line in a trench. And when I say line, I mean conduit. And so this conduit, it would be, I believe, 2 conduits. I could pull up the electrical detail here. Yeah, it'd be 2 conduits, about 24 inches minimum deep. And those conduits would be there for the electrical company to pull conductor through. And so they would land it from the manhole that's up in the northern portion of the site, and they would run it to this proposed transformer here through actually an underground boring from this point where you're looking at B1. So we trench up to that point through the green space. And then in order to reduce disturbance to the parking lot, reduce, asphalt, soil removal, things of that nature. We actually do a trenchless technology where we bore the conduit run under the parking lot from this point B1 here to this point B2 here, and that conduit lands. And then the electric and light department would essentially pull from this location here south, wherever they plan to go in whatever geometry, which, would be sort of separate from the application that you have before you here. And so the reason I was mentioning that is just to give sort of a context about the project and that this essentially would kind of be happening, even if our project didn't exist, I guess, with the exception of this section here. But there still would be a necessity to pull power from that manhole there. It's really the only accessible location to be able to bring power through this portion of the site. So I hope that answers your question. I may have given a long-winded response to that, so I apologize, but I hope that helps give some context.
I have some questions, a little bit more from the ecological standpoint. Can you tell me how many charging stations are you putting in again?
Yes.
Just ballpark.
151.
Yeah, it's about 150 charging stations, or stalls, we're calling them. So each charging station actually has 2 ports on it. So 151 stalls.
The reason for my question is that I'm trying to think of the habitat that's around there. So is there going to be more night like illumination now that we're going to be charging? Obviously, we'll have some form of noise or whatever, but I'm thinking of, is there going to be any change to lighting in that parking lot? How is this changing for the environment for the critters that surround that area?
Yeah, good question. So there wouldn't be any changes to lighting. There wouldn't be any additional, I guess, like visual nuisances or visual disturbances that I think your question is trying to get at with respect to the environment there. I don't think there would not be any visual changes that we're proposing aside from the electrical equipment and the EV charging stations, and then of course the trees that we're planting. So
I guess that's my question: is how much do those stations illuminate from a darkness standpoint?
The stations don't illuminate anything. Again, they're specifically for these vehicles. They're not open to the public, so it's not like, you've probably seen a charging station once before where it's got a big screen on it and it's got maybe like an LED sort of a frame going on it, and it's a bit of a, kind of a cartoonish looking device. These are not meant for the public. They're not meant to be eye-catching. These are specifically installed for this private use for Amazon specifically.
Right. Yeah, and that's not where I'm going. I'm going more from migratory standpoint. If we're now adding more light into that area where we know we have a lot of migratory animals in that area.
Okay. Yeah, there's no lighting. There's no additional lighting proposed, and from what I understand, the charging stations that we're proposing to place here do not have light that would be cast in such a way that would disturb any sort of environmental migratory patterns.
Okay, if you could just confirm that at a later date, that would be great. And then I did have a question for the area that's disturbed. Is that an area that was or had anything for proposed snow storage at any time? I'm trying to think of where there was salt storage that I know there was a challenge on the site. Trash was an issue that we need to talk about on that site, and then also snow push.
Not that I am aware of. We had coordinated heavily with Amazon, and we had used the as-built plans here, and so we typically do avoid all of those locations. We do a number of these throughout the Northeast. I actually just got finished with one up in New Hampshire, and someone had exactly the same question. It's something that we look to avoid specifically are those snow storage areas. So to answer your question, we're not disturbing any of that.
Which for Amazon is at the far left end on this plan view.
Okay.
Dean, can you go to sheet 3? Maybe it's not sheet 3. It's PDF page 3.
This key plan.
Yep. Can you zoom in on that area you're proposing to replant in?
Sure. I just want to make sure it matches up properly with the landscape plan here because they have 2 different orientations.
Mm-hmm. What's that infrastructure right there that you propose planting on top of? SS sanitary?
That would look to be some form of sanitary.
Looks like a septic system to me.
Yeah, connected to this outbuilding here, the restroom building.
So you're not planting that, or you're moving that.
Let me double check here because we had looked at this pretty thoroughly.
Not thoroughly enough. No.
Yeah, I
You know,
guess
they
guess that-
overlap with each other. Let me lay out
Yeah.
my points here.
Okay.
Your feasibility study doesn't make any sense to me. The idea, listen, just a dirt engineer, but the idea that 900 feet of line is infeasible because of voltage drops, but 400 is feasible. I don't get that. That doesn't, I just don't buy that. Second, the argument that there's additional disturbance. Yes, there is additional disturbance, but not to resource areas. So I understand it would be difficult to bring the line down the road. I understand you may have to bring it all the way around. That's an issue of poor planning. And this was something that's been on, as you said, has been on Amazon's radar for a very long time. So why there isn't conduit there just sort of boggles my mind. So frankly, I look at the feasibility study here and just I don't buy the distinction. It looks a lot to me like it's inconvenient and expensive, not infeasible. And so there's that point. The replanting on top of what appears to be a septic system there doesn't make any sense to me. You got to rethink that. The replantings down below look like they could be in conflict where the town is coming through. We need to rethink about that. The argument that the town sounds like just sort of like forgot to get authorization to permit these things to provide power to their well. Don't totally understand that. Also not sure. The sequencing doesn't make any sense to me. It feels like something's off here. So I need to understand from the town, and maybe this is a separate conversation with the town. Do you really need this, and why wasn't this in your filing? And the last piece is, when we met last time, we pointed out that there appears to be conflict between the utilities that you're installing and the infiltration system within the parking lot. We said, you need to look at that and respond to that. Your response in the response letter was, we don't need a stormwater plan. That's not what we were asking for. We were saying, how is this going to change the stormwater on the site, particularly given the conflict with the infiltration? Maybe it doesn't, but you need to think through that. Can't just say we don't need a stormwater plan. So with all of that, I think you need to go back to the drawing board, and I think we should reconvene in a couple of weeks.
Okay. I would just like to answer a couple of the points, or at least provide comment to a couple of the points. So with respect to the last point about the infiltration structure, so we had looked at that. That was something that was actually on our plan initially. We're showing that there is plenty of clearance with respect to the utilities that we're installing there. That top of stone is about 232. The finished elevation about 236. So we've got about 4 feet from that top of stone to the existing surface, and our conduit is about 2 feet underground. So we would have some separation there.
Okay.
With respect to, I guess what you're referring to as a feasibility analysis is what we responded to in terms of that comment in number 3 here on the comment response memo.
Yep.
Is that what you're referring to as feasibility analysis?
What we specifically requested, and what the Wetland Protection Act specifically gives us the authority to request, is a feasibility study. This was a pretty thin feasibility study, but yes, that's what we requested, and that's what I understood this to hold itself out to be.
Okay. And what about these options that we laid out were not sufficient for what the information that you were looking for was?
Broad generalizations about unacceptable voltage drop. Again, I don't, just a dirt engineer, but I don't understand how 900 feet infeasible, 400 to 500 feet from the existing utility, totally feasible. The arguments when we get down to, when we look at option 1 in the first paragraph, this would be very extensive with consideration to additional impacts to the wetlands, trees, and operation of the business. We're going to set aside operation of the business and just think about wetlands and trees. I don't understand how installing a conduit through an existing roadway creates any wetland or tree impacts that haven't already been impacted. I understand it's expensive and disruptive. Those are not the relevant questions here.
I understand that. I think what we're trying to get at in laying this information out is that what we're proposing to disturb in a manner to essentially create, let's say, 150 new non-ICE vehicles, vans that are, driving around the town. In terms of the disturbance that we're proposing here to the trees and to a wetland, adjacent to a wetland area that does have a lot of disturbance already right next to it, is not very significant. And when you compare that to what you're asking us to look into and study the feasibility on, which is a very long conduit run over a bridge that has many conduits in it. This bridge is heated. I'm sure you know that. And to look into all of what would be required to do that, in comparison to what we're proposing to do, which is a relatively de minimis disturbance to an area here, I think it is something that is not very comparable. And so the items that we reference in our comment response memo about voltage drop and some of the generalizations that we make with respect to disturbance to the business operation, and then disturbance to additional areas of the site, the comparability between the two from our standpoint is they're kind of apart.
I completely understand from your standpoint, from a business operation and profit.
Well, that's just one piece.
Motive. I completely understand that, but that's not what we're tasked with looking at.
Okay, right. If I may interject, Carl, I'm going to pull you back into this conversation because there are commissioners, Dean, that have been on this commission long enough and remember when this particular project, which was significant, and we made a lot of alterations to the land and the wetlands at that point. It was very much brought up at that point, and Carl reiterated that. That was part of the discussion. Are we not setting aside what you would call stall areas? So this was not a lovely, easy project to start with. And so now you're coming back and asking for more when I feel like this land has already given up a significant amount already. So Carl, I would ask you if you...
I can talk about the electrical vehicle discussion, because I know that was... In fact, I had brought that up specifically during the initial permitting process, because it was well known at that point that Amazon was heading the direction of electrifying all their vehicles. So I just assumed that they're building a new facility, that's the direction they were going, but the answer was they weren't going that direction, and they weren't prepared. I think Chase had asked that question at the time, why didn't you think about this at the initial time of application? That wasn't, how long has this facility been there? It hasn't been there that long. Yes, I'm a little amiss with that. Not forward thinking. But like Sarah said, we kind of put this facility on this, kind of squeeze this facility on this land. there was a lot going on at the time.
And I would argue we're still squeezing it on. We're trying to plant 60 trees on top of what appears to be a septic system. And I think if nothing else, we need to ask the applicant to agree to continue this so that they can investigate whether or not that even makes sense. Because right now, it's not obvious to me that we have a plan in front of us that could even be constructed, even if the rest of the commission thinks I'm being a kook here.
Chase, you're not being a kook.
So we don't have a DEP number at the present time, so it would be up to the applicant. I don't know, if they want to extend or not. If there are any other commissioners that would like to offer any insight to the applicant, feel free to do so. Well, we definitely need to keep going.
Yeah, I do. I mean, depending on if it were go the route that I'm seeing a line
Putting
from
all these trucks, we're electrifying them. We're going to be good for the environment. So you should give us this instead. And as far as I'm concerned, and we talked about this back the last time, that there's already a path where electrical comes into the building, and why can't you run this additional electrical through something you've already chewed up instead of destroying an entire however many feet of, because you're going to have to dig down and basically destroy it. So, and your mention of it was, well, we can't do that because it's going to be disruptive to the business.
Well, again, that's just one point of why we couldn't be able to do that. I do want to remind the commission also of the nature of the power availability that's there on site. That manhole that we are tying into was placed there for a reason. It's there in order to pull power from. And unfortunately, it's placed in a spot that's not so conducive to the adjacent wetlands, and that you would need to disturb some resource areas to be able to get to that and pull power from. It is an unfortunate placement of that manhole. In order to electrify this large fleet of vans, we would need this level of power, and we would need to bring it from that manhole because it is the place that's there for us to be able to do that from. In order for us to pull power from an entire separate side of the site, it just is incomparable in terms of what it would take to do that. And the insignificance of the disturbance that we're proposing here is again far from what the disturbance would be for running that line from a different place, which it's not even able to be pulled from the building. I guess is really what I'm trying to get at. And I think to the gentleman who was just speaking, the point about business operations and Chase, you had mentioned business operations as well. That's just one of a few reasons. And so I think we need to look at this in a little bit more of a broader sense in terms of why we can't be doing something different here. And stuff.
And so we're going to keep moving, but one thing I would encourage you to do, Dean, with your team is to go back to the original filing so that you can look at the historic piece of this site to see the compromises that were made for on many levels on that. So I would encourage you to take a history lesson on that. If there's no other comments, I'd like to keep this moving. Kyle,
sorry, I thought I was trying to talk. I jumped in, but just if this is where we were going to go, I missed the first hearing, but if we're piping or doing trenchless pipe installation under this parking area, I didn't see any details on how that's working. That's going to be, you're going to be digging a pit inside or right next to a resource area. I need to see your plan for that, your contingency plans and all that there. That was the first I had heard of that this was going underground. So, I know it's very quick and rushed. I know we want to keep moving, but I need a lot more information on entrance, exit, machinery, everything that's going to be inside of our resource area.
That's great. Okay. Thank you for adding that. Yep. Thank you for that. Any other additions? We meet again on October 22nd. Would you like to be heard at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's now 8:50. I would like to, so our 8:15 has been postponed. I'd like to entertain opening the 8:30, which is an update enforcement order on 0 Ipswich. Who would like to speak to that? Mr. Gallagher, I see that you're on.
And I can't get the other Mark on for some reason.
Good evening. I'm sorry. I had it on mute. I apologize. Can you hear me?
It's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. Mark Gallagher from Seal Harbor Development. How is everyone this evening?
Good, thanks. And so, Amy, I just tried to move Mark Jr. over and he declined. So.
Yeah, it failed when I tried.
Okay, well, it was declined. So, okay. Mr. Gallagher, go ahead. We look forward to your update.
Good evening. Well, my update is fairly quick and simple. We received an email in the last day or so from Amy indicating that I guess that you had discussed, the commissioners had discussed the property 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, neither Sue Carter or myself received that email. So until we corresponded with Amy today, Mark Jr. did, we were unaware that you were asking us to bring a planting plan to the triangle area that's out, or maybe within the resource area or outside. It doesn't really matter. About 3,300 square feet. I would suggest, because of obviously seasonal timing, would the commission be comfortable if we worked over the next week? Stu Carter worked with Amy and maybe one of the commissioners to come up with an acceptable plan within that area so that we could get plants allocated before the season ends from one of our nurseries, and then effectuate it as quickly as we can between now and the next meeting.
I think that's fine. Is there commissioners have thoughts on that? Obviously, we've got a short season, but to see if there are some things that we could get done now.
Yep. I would assume that we're going to model it after the similar to what we did on the adjacent property. I know that we talked about the new growth that's down closer to the wetland itself. But I would assume we're going to model it after the same types of trees and shrubs that we used at Foss, which seem to do really well there and have created nice habitat.
And I think that's where the commission can, if there's a commission member that wants to look at that, to look at what has been removed. And it does have, that site definitely has a different footprint.
Yep.
So I think we just have to be careful with that. Is there a commissioner that would like to work with Sue and Mr. Gallagher, just hopefully in the next week or so that we can put this forward to October 22nd and come up with something concrete to allow you to move forward at that time?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I was already on taps for that. Right. So
perfect. Okay. So, Mark, with your permission, we would ask Kyle to get together with Sue on site at their earliest convenience.
Absolutely.
Can I just make sure I understand something? Mark, are you asking for a commissioner to essentially sign off on a restoration plan so that you all could implement it in the next week or two? Or are you just looking for a commissioner to help make sure you get close to something that we will all agree on?
Whichever way you would like to proceed, I am comfortable with. If there's a commissioner that can work with Sue and then come back to the board, and we can get started, that's wonderful. If it's a commissioner that can work with Sue and we bring the plan back to the entire board on the 22nd, I'm fine with that also. I'd just like to hone in on the plants because of the seasonality of this. I don't want to lose the opportunity to get some of them, if not all of them, in the ground this year.
I mean, my take is I'm comfortable with either one, but I think the commission should express an opinion on whether or not we are empowering Kyle to essentially give you the green light to do things, or if we want it all to come back before we give you the green light.
Whatever you're comfortable with, I will go along with.
I would think to come back, Kyle, for the 22nd, I would think that you and Sue Carter together could formulate, having been out on site, to then collaboratively present with Mark's blessing at the 22nd to then
Sure.
kind of roll right from there.
No problems. I will,
Well, no,
I
I guess
will,
that was just my 2 cents. I don't know what the other commissioners feel about that.
okay.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay, great. We'll see you again on the 20.
Second. Kyle, do you have, Sue's, contact information so you can contact her directly? I'll drop her an email right now.
I can connect everybody.
Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah,
super.
because I mean, if you have availability at the same time, it wouldn't hurt to have you out
Yeah.
there as well. So,
Yeah, that would be awesome. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks,
Great.
Mark.
What I'd like to do now is to jump back into administrative discussions. We had 4 that were added. Can we do community garden first, please?
The community garden, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
It's been a little weird. We're getting a little low on budget, which is the water. And there are some issues with folks out there not taking care of their gardens, which I've been pretty lenient with. If someone wants to spend $15 on and just plant 1 tomato, well, you know, that's what they want to do. So I'm not sure if anybody really wanted to look closer at how the community gardens are run. I was almost thinking of asking the water department, the electric light and water department, for one of their community grants to cover the cost of water next year. So we can basically refill the coffers, if you will. The other option is also to potentially expand the community garden at Yap. Because it's the Newtown Hill one, which is on a hill, which is in the worst shape. It might not end up being the best place, and it's getting hard to reclaim it. So I think basically I just want to throw it out there and see if anybody had any bright ideas, or we'll take a closer look at the budget tomorrow, because I couldn't get into the system today.
Would it make sense to, I'm never one to really want to raise fees, but would it make sense to raise the fee up by $5? Would that make much of an impact?
I think it would make a difference. It's been a while since they've been raised, especially because initially the water department was just, giving the water for free, so it wasn't an issue. So I did raise them, 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. So it has been a while. Someone who wants to get into one of the garden plots but can't because they're all taken. Seashed suggested we charge a lot more, because then it becomes more valuable to the person who is leasing the lot, and so they might take better care of it.
What's the current rate?
$15.
Okay.
And it comes and goes, up until last year, there have been empty plots because nobody wanted it. But now suddenly we have a 3-person wait list.
Andrew, what was your suggestion? An increase of $5?
So perhaps we could raise it from $15 to $20 and bump it up a little bit, help with the water costs, and maybe go from there.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to reaching out for a grant if we can do both. Why not do both?
That's an option. Why don't we do it?
Try. So I think what I'm hearing is that we'll try both avenues. Andrews, with your suggestion, if we have someone that wants to second your thought of raising 5, and then we still try, and if someone has time to work on a grant.
I'll second Andrews.
Okay.
All right. Roll call votes. Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Carl.
Tom Melberg, aye.
Kyle.
Well, Maxfield, aye.
Chase.
Chase Kerbig, aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Perfect. I have one update. Tomorrow we're meeting in room 103 from 4:30 to 5:30, which is the parcel identification. I know I'm going. Andrew, you're going?
I'll be there too.
Yep.
I cannot
Anybody
make
else
that
wants to
time.
join us? Come on in.
I can't make that time, unfortunately.
Okay. Turtle Sidewalk.
So it's pretty clear this is set for October 15 and 17. There's no way gonna be able to do both sites on the same day. It just gets dark. And both of them take, you know, a little bit of walking to get into. So I think right now, Kyle, you could only make the 15th, and Sarah, you could only make the 17th.
I think there were other people on that.
Right, but and Ed, Carl, and Michael could make either one of them. So maybe if you guys can sort yourselves into two groups, and one group can go see the well site, and one group can go see the Smith property site, or you're certainly welcome to go to both of them.
That's fine. Just I think just throw in times of each day and where the first one is and where the second one is. Whoever can show up would be great.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that at least one person shows up. So,
well, I definitely can't do the 15th, but I'll give it a whirl for the 17th.
Okay.
Okay. If you could just send along a couple reminders, that would be great. Kyle, to have one.
I mentioned to Tim and Amy this morning, actually, they might be finished up now. I think I saw it early last week. Well, I think it's 145. It's the first property as you pass Brown Woods coming from town center, first property on the right. It's pretty sure there's a resource area right there. Their yard is always wet and they limit their mowing, but they appeared to do some extensive patio wall building work. I didn't stop to see it, but there was definitely equipment out there in stone. So
yeah, that's actually Stan Shea's property. He is the guy who gave us permission to do the Phragmites control on his property as well as Brown's Woods, so he'd get the whole patch. So he should know what he's got out there.
How do you want
to?
Tim, either you or Tim, both of you go out?
Yeah, Tim was able to stop by today, but nobody was actually out there working. So when I'll drive by tomorrow and see if there's anybody there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we had tree policy.
No meaningful updates on it, and noodling with language. Haven't made a lot of progress.
Okay. And then 845, it's now 902, Nagog Hill Orchard Lot 107-A, transfer to Littleton Conservation Commission for Select Board. Discuss language and presentation for town meeting warrant article for transfer of approximately 7.9 acres of land. So hopefully you all have been following this. I told Chase that I'll do the presentation as long as you all show up. And that someone does. I do not have time to do the slide deck. What I'd love to do is to just, if I can throw out what I think might work, but I'm very much appreciative of other people's comments. I think maybe 3 or 4 slides at maximum. The first would open up with the picture of the actual water site and the land. And then one that might have a very brief timeline of when the property was purchased to 1999. And then this one does not have a CR. This one has no restrictions. It's unrestricted. And then in 2015, we did have a vote. The townspeople approved it. We never did the work for that. So, and then the next slide would basically be the lot that shows the 20 acres and where the line is that leaves the buildings to the top. And we acquired the 7.9. And then I think also to have, and this is where I would love feedback of benefits to the townspeople, that we're preserving that vista. It's a historic scenic road. We're then able to try and navigate the best we can with the invasives, and then potentially have a pathway forward to allow a walking trail there in the future, and then utilize Sarah Doublet parking lot.
So you're asking for help to make the pictures?
Yes.
I can do that with you.
I was gonna say, unless Chase is about to volunteer, Tim and I could also do it. And you might want the first slide to be sort of a locus map.
Yep, perfect. Come on, gang. You're all supporting this. Someone should have some feedback.
You just do too good a job, Sarah.
Yeah, I think what you said so far, Sarah, is in your narrative is perfect. I mean,
And Chase is so good at putting the slides together since he's got that experience. that-
A lot of practice.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That was an amazing presentation you did.
I guess I struggle with like the disclaimer because everyone's going to freak out. They think it's the orchard. And it's like,
Yep.
hey, we're just here for what everyone has already thought since 2000, that it's in the care, custody, control. Everyone thought it was, but it never got signed over. So I struggle with trying to do that.
I like the
like-
timeline. I think that's a perfect way of capturing that sentiment, right? We've already done this, but town council's being a stick in the mud and says we need another formal authorization. Blame Tom.
Throw Tom under the bus.
100%.
With his firm.
That's what town meeting's all for.
Listen, if you can't throw town council and the town's lawyer under the bus, who can you throw under the bus?
All right. Does no one have any other?
Real quick.
Yes.
Just to clarify, I did send Mark and Sue what you guys requested. Kyle, you got copied on that. Did you get that email?
I got the email from you, I believe. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Yeah, just double check it. What wasn't posted, but yeah, okay. Or was posted. So
No, it went to them
Okay.
the next day.
coming back to NAGOG, stay focused. Does anyone else have any other questions?
we,
No, I know the warrant has been set. I don't know where it is, what number it is.
I think it goes to the printer or goes mailing tomorrow.
Can
Or the
you-
10th. The 10th. Something
Beginning,
happened.
middle, end? Like, I don't know how many warrant articles there are this year.
12.
Yeah, 12 total.
Sarah,
That's right, Andy.
one thing I might, we got an inside man on this now.
You do.
Sarah, if one of your concerns is the inaccurate understanding that this has something to do with the orchard as an agricultural property, perhaps once you and I get the presentation put together, you could put a paragraph around that and we can share it with those folks who are both the presentation and that paragraph with the folks who are most interested in this, the Littleton Trails group, things like that, to really try and get those questions out ahead of time.
Okay. I would like, and I don't know, having not seen what's going into the booklet. So LCT formally voted, and I have to ask Will Pickard, they were supposed to meet so that